Thanks to you ladies, thank you so much. And then we'll wrap up and some networking teas, some coffees outside. So, as I was just saying, if we can capture some fabulous photos of you on International Women's Day, it would be fantastic. So we'll very much be out with phones and then taking some photographs of you. Lots of fan images of our colleagues across the campus already here to share with you. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Lucy. She will have give you an overview of how she's coped with building confidence in the workplace and knowing value and worth. And then the floor will be open for questions after each speaker. So do feel free to ask questions. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Abby, and thank you to the whole campus for putting on what I think is a very important event. Thank you also for inviting me to speak at it. It's only 10:15 and I've already had about 100 exciting conversations with people this morning, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? I'm very much still in the mode of thinking any real life event is more of a party than a work activity at the moment, so long may that continue. When Abby said we were going to record it and we might live stream it, I had those nerves that I think many of us get at this point. I was thinking I'd be coming for a nice little quiet conversation, little boutique chat, and I thought, oh, does that mean I've got to change what I'm going to say? Does that mean I need to be a little bit less truthful about my own story? So I had a chat with myself, and hopefully you'll be glad that I decided the answer was no. I'm going to talk as openly as I can today. That means I'm going to tell you some stuff that is quite uncomfortable for me, but hopefully be able to answer some questions and make you guys feel a little bit more comfortable about sharing your own stories in the workplace. And I just remembered about the slides changed, but there's a subtitle today about confidence in the workplace. I don't know whether it's relevant or not, but I had a dream that I did actually get a PhD last night, and I hadn't decided not to do that, so I don't know what that means, but let's pretend just for this morning that I did do that. We're going to talk about women in the workplace, of course, that's the topic. I do want to just start everything I say this morning by saying that isn't the only problem we have in the workplace with diversity and inclusion. There are lots and lots of challenges that we face. Talking today about women in the workplace doesn't mean that I don't value and feel all of those other challenges. I very, very much do. And the sooner we can get rid of non-protected characteristics and see all of ourselves as individuals with many, many different data points that define us, then the better we'll be. But today is about women in the workplace, and that is what I'm going to focus on. So I started work just before the millennium. I think you've got sort of 3 eras talking today, and hopefully that'll be nice. And when I started work, my parents went out and bought me a very nice, very smart, very tidy grey suit. Those of you who know me are probably thinking, okay. I thought the suit was perfect. I really did. I thought it was perfect for the job that I was going to do. And one day I wore that suit into work with a pink top on underneath it. And I was teased all day long for being too girly, and I never wore the pink top to work again. I wore it at the weekends, so I liked it a lot. I'm going to come back to that. You may not be surprised to know. In that same job, I was introduced as the token female engineer. That was actually annoying on 2 levels, because I was a graduate scientist, not an engineer. Hopefully that was obvious. I've also been stalked at work by colleagues and then asked whether I'd encouraged it by wearing lipstick. I've had married men leave secret gifts for me in my office, and when I investigated it, I wasn't the only woman in the workplace who had had that experience. After 10 years in one of my jobs, when everybody got given gold cufflinks, it was decided that that wasn't appropriate for me. I was the first woman to do 10 years in the company. So they disposed of the idea of gold cufflinks forevermore and gave me a bottle of champagne instead. And perhaps my absolute favourite, and then I'll stop on these kind of weird stories which lower the mood a bit, was 5 years ago when I got a board role at the Eden Project as a non-executive director. I was really proud of it, and I got told by a male colleague that it was much easier for women to get board roles, and that's where I got it. which I can hear a few people being surprised by. It makes me shake when I tell these stories because they still upset me. You know, some of those are 20-plus-year-old stories, but they do still upset me. In my younger days, I was also told I was feisty and pushy and bossy and an alpha female, and I can see nods around the room. These days, it's a little bit more subtle. These days, I get told I make spur-of-the-moment decisions, and I make up my own mind regardless of what X, Y, or Z other person's opinion is. For the record, that's not true. I listen, and then I do make a decision because that's what we all do in our jobs, I hope, because that's the point of us being there and being paid. I'm going to rewind a little bit. Before I started work, when I was at school, I was starting the career I hoped I was going to have, which was as an international athlete. I was a junior international. My event was 800 metres, and I was one of the only girls in my area who did this event, certainly at that level. And there was nobody to train with. There were only men to train with. And I used to train with a male squad at Windsor, which you can imagine as a 15-year-old girl and with lots of 20-year-old men was a very strange experience for me. And in the end, my parents started driving me down to Andover twice a week so I could train with one of the national coaches. And a lot has changed in that area. I can see that. And why do I mention that today? Because that's nothing to do with women in technology. The reason I mention it is that the Women in Sports study has just been released a few days ago. And in that, they concluded and announced that between primary school and junior school, 1.3 million girls drop out of sport. And the two reasons that are most cited for them dropping out of sport are fear of being judged and lack of confidence. And I thought to myself, as I read that report, which was sent to me by one of the very fabulous male feminists I am lucky enough to have in my life, that I think that is still the same state for women in technology. It certainly is for me. I come into work every day fearing that I'm going to say something that's going to be misrepresented, misunderstood, that my confidence won't be high enough for me to get through the day with the scenarios I'm facing. So why does that grey suit that I mentioned matter? It was a lovely suit, and I was very thankful to my parents for buying it for me as I left university with no money at all. The reason it matters is it wasn't me. And those of you who know me know that the very smart, neat grey suit is not my style at all. I like big structures, I like bold patterns, I like bright colours when I can get away with it. And you know, sometimes the stranger the better with my clothes. So everything I was doing with that grey suit, I was doing to fit in. And it's a bit of a, I suppose, a little bit of a sign. I'm overplaying it slightly, I suppose. But the point is, it was true. And the one day when I did try to make it a bit more me, it didn't work, not in the workplace that I was in. And of course, why did I get called an alpha female? I got called an alpha female because I was probably behaving like one. My role models were almost entirely alpha males if I wanted to get on and get into the career that I wanted to have. And I'm not a man, so my choice was to be an alpha female. But we want to, and we really need to, be ourselves in the workplace. That's what will work better for us as individuals. And it's also what's going to work better for our workplaces because they're going to get much better from us. We all know that, and that's not saying anything new there. So I'm very, very happy every time I see someone come into work with crazy makeup or great hairdo or weird clothes or something that I know is them saying, this is me, and you can like it or you can leave it because this is me. And I see that more and more and more in young people. So I know I started off with some slightly difficult stories, but actually what I see mostly when I come into work now is a lot of really positive change. And I also know that a lot of my own workplace problems have been self-inflicted. I could have been bolder. I could have been. And I wish I had been in many ways. But there is a lot of time still. I'm probably halfway through my career and I can look at where I am now and I can say there's a lot I can do differently and there's a lot that I can learn from the people who are joining the workforce now. I was looking at the Maya Angelou quotes, and she says, one of the famous ones, and you'll have heard this one, I'm sure. I love to see a young girl go out and grab the world by the lapels. Excuse the French coming up. Life's a bitch, you've got to go out and kick ass. It isn't very subtle, it's not very subtle. It's not really my style either. But if you look at quite a lot of the other things that she says, her real message is to go out into the world and be the best person that you can be. Being ourselves, our whole selves in the workplace, is a slightly overused expression in many ways, but it's probably the boldest thing we can ever do. And honestly, I'm not sure I will ever manage it. I think I've probably got a little bit too much baggage, and I'm probably a little bit too scared. I'm not quite bold enough. But every single young person I meet, every single new person in the workforce I meet, nudges me a little bit further forward in that. When I see them comfortable in their own skin, it makes me feel better being comfortable in my own skin. Which brings me on to the key, what can we do question, because it's all about what can we do, isn't it? And I think it's so important that we mentor, that we coach, that we stand up on these stages when we can and we tell our stories. When I started mentoring, 2/3 of the people I mentored that came to me and asked me to mentor them were women. And absolute shame on me, and I've written in my notes in capital letters here, shame on me, because I felt I was doing something wrong. I felt I wasn't good enough for men, that it was more women than men that wanted me to mentor them. And it took me probably until I was too old, it should have been sooner, to realise that actually that was a very positive thing, that people were looking at me and saying there's something I can see there that I want to hold on to and I can get something positive from it. And that is so important, because there's so much that still needs to change. Yes, there are great things happening. Yes, there are changes happening, but there are things that aren't changing yet. I mean, I don't tell people when I've got my period. I don't tell people that I cry more when I've got my period. And if I'm in the workplace and something really crappy happens that day, then I may not cope with it very well, and I may look a bit weak. So that needs to change, doesn't it? Because we can't really change who we are biologically. I've been around a lot of friends trying to get pregnant over the last 15 years, and that is not something that responds to Microsoft Outlook calendar invites and email chains and phone calls. You know, when you're ovulating and trying to get pregnant, you have a moment in time and you need to respond to it. We don't talk about that enough yet either. And something I'm very aware of what's going to be coming up for me very soon in life is the menopause. Now, I know that that's starting to be talked about at work now, but not so much, not enough that we all understand and know what we need to be doing to help people out. And you hear conversations around the workplace like, oh, when I go through it, I want to be more like person A, not person B. Did you see what happened to person B? And you think, this isn't right, this isn't healthy. We need to be having these conversations up front and helping person B out, whoever they were, so that they can carry on doing what they were clearly enjoying doing until something that they can't control started happening to them. So there's a lot that needs to change. And it's a bit disappointing, I suppose, if we want to look at it, that it's only in the 2020s that we're really starting to discuss these things in the workplace. Now, I want to finish because we've got two more very exciting speakers, and I'm very keen to hear what they're going to tell me, as well as everything that you'll be hearing today. And I wanted to end by saying great things are happening in sport. You know, you can look at athletics. It's changed dramatically since I was young. Rugby, cricket, swimming, cycling, wherever you want to look, the change is clear. In my own team at the Catape, I've got a nearly gender-balanced direct team that I work with, and that's fantastic. And in the non-exec work, I do the balance is shifting dramatically. And the most recent experience I gave you was 5 years ago of a strange comment in the workplace. So that's a good sign, isn't it? It's a really good sign. But if we all commit here, all of us, and maybe if we've made it online as well, those online, that we'll support one person a year for the rest of our career to help them be more themselves in the workplace. You can choose a woman, but you don't have to choose a woman. Choose someone who wants your support and wants to benefit from your experiences. Then we're all going to make a massive difference, aren't we? We're going to make 40 odd people's worth of difference per person. And if we make that our minimum, then I think we're onto a good thing. Last night, a good friend said to me, but the thing is, you're still pioneers, Lucy. I don't think I want to be a pioneer. I don't want to be a pioneer. So that stops me. And I thought instead back to fashion and clothes and things where I feel comfortable. A famous designer called Maria Grazia Chiuri once put the slogan, which I love, on a t-shirt for a Christian Dior campaign, and it said, "We should all be feminists." So maybe the phrase is, "We should all be pioneers," because I don't want to be a pioneer really, but hopefully some of you guys do. Thank you.
Questions for Lucy at all?
So I've been talking to a few of my friends this morning, and quite a few of us are going to talks like this today. But they're all like focused on women, like sorry, I'm not sorry, women's confidence, all that kind of stuff. And I know it's talked about a lot of educating men. Do you think that, and not just men, but like everyone, and there's a lot of women in here today, we know all of these things and we want to write them, but do you think there should be more, we should be trying to kind of educate more than just talking about our feelings as well and our problems?
I think it's really true, and I mean, the bad side of this bit of the conversation is you go down the Anglican route, isn't it? And I don't think any of us probably want to sound that way. But I think there are more we can do. We did, this is open to women and men, but maybe every woman should have been bringing a man with them today. You know, maybe there should be stronger steps in that direction, because I do agree. You know, everybody has to be on the journey. But again, it's not just about gender diversity. It's actually about all of the protected characteristics, and I'd rather there weren't protected characteristics. It's all about just being individuals, isn't it?
I don't know about you, Lucy, but what I found is it's a generational thing as well. And people are becoming more considerate generally to their colleagues, whether they're male, female, menopause, or an illness maybe. I think we need to be more considerate of our colleagues, and each and one of us has a different need behind the scenes.
Yes, and as much as I love the phrase bringing our whole selves to work, I mean, there's a lot that we don't want to bring to work, not least because we might want a break from it ourselves. Yeah. And so there's always stuff going on in people's lives that perhaps would give context to the way they're behaving, but they don't want to share that with us. And I think the philosophy tends to be a bit too much about, well, if they shared it with us, we'd behave differently. But actually, it would be nicer, and I think perhaps this is what you're saying, we don't need to know everything about everyone. Let's just take it on face value that they're a decent individual, and that if they're behaving in a particular way, then there's perhaps something that's driving that behind the scenes, and try and be a bit kinder about it without needing to know everything.
Absolutely, and it seems to be happening already.
I don't know how we are time-wise.
One more, that's all right.
Hello, the lady in a fantastic orange mask.
Yeah, I know, it's embarrassing, isn't it? Yeah, the rest of Ralph, nice snazzy ones, and I just went for the budget orange one. Don't want to take too much time. And just, yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your talk and for being so honest as well. I think it's easy for these events to be very much like, yeah, just be amazing women and you'll be fine, rather than actually being honest about all these things that happen that, you know, a lot of our colleagues aren't even aware of. So I guess because it's things like that that can build up over time that make women leave tech, I'm just wondering if you've got sort of any advice on kind of what kept you going, like what stopped you from leaving, you know, all these things that happen.
Yeah, I don't know. As I said, my first career choice was an athlete, so it's not like I wanted to do this my whole life. Why didn't I leave? Why didn't I move on? Because tech isn't worse than anywhere else, I think, is probably the truth. You know, there's a lot of fantastic things we can make better with technology, and I fundamentally believe that. I mean, I'm in the space world, but I believe that across tech. And to go somewhere else, you'd lose the tech, but you wouldn't gain a better environment, I don't think. So that's probably what keeps you here. But good question. You're going to have me mulling over that one.
Lovely. Thanks so much. Right, Shefali. Oh, thanks for joining us. Shefali is a co-founder director of Box Designer.
Thank you, Abby. Thank you, Lucy. That inspired me in so many ways. I can't even begin to explain, I have a lot to think about as well. When Abby reached out and said, Shefali, we would love for you to join this event. Would you like to be a speaker? First thing I said to her was, I don't know if I'm inspiring enough to even be here. And I had a moment of doubt in that. I didn't have enough confidence in what I've achieved, where I've come from, and I didn't think I would add much value. And after listening to Lucy, I think I like to say I have a lot to share with you all. And I like to believe myself that I have achieved a lot. I've gone through a lot. And I'd love to share my story with you all. When Abby said, can you share a picture or a slide? This is what I put on. I want to talk about imposter syndrome. But there's really another image I wanted to put on here, but I held back because of some of the things Lucy talked about. So if I found a picture on my phone, I'm going to show it to you all. It may not be obvious from people in the back, but if you're interested, I can show you the picture in person later as well. So this is me. This is the 5-year-old me. Am I a boy? Am I a girl? Am I a woman of color? I'm none of those things. I'm just a child who has a lot of dreams and wants to achieve those dreams and help this world to be a better place. So growing up, because of the way I looked, I was made fun of a lot. I was called a tomboy. I was questioned if I'm even a girl. And every day I'll go to school and girls would isolate me. They wouldn't talk to me because I didn't fit into their category of what a girl needs to be. And guys would make fun of me because I didn't look attractive enough from their perspective. And I'll come back home and I'll talk to my dad and my mom and I'll sit them down. I still remember crying and said, I don't feel pretty enough. Dad, why do I need to get this haircut? Why can't I have long hair just like other girls? And I still remember his words. He said, do you want to fit in or do you want to be yourself? And that stuck with me all my life, has stayed with me. And I said, no, I want to be myself. I don't like long hair. I like to be free. I don't like wearing the clothes that people expect me to wear. So I will be myself no matter what. And I still remember I went home every day after being bullied, after being called names, and my dad would sit me down and say, you're the most beautiful person I have ever met in my life. He didn't call me a woman. He didn't call me a girl. He said, you're the most beautiful person I will ever know in my life. And that gave me confidence like no one else. And then I leave India. I'm originally from India, if you can't tell from my attire. So I'm changing what professionalism means to me. This is professional to me. I may not wear a dress or trousers. I like wearing these things and I will wear them. It doesn't mean I'm not professional. It doesn't mean I don't know my stuff. I do. My clothes are just a way for me to represent myself. And I don't want to feel bad or feel judged just because of the way I look or the way I feel or the way I dress. And Lucy, you talked about, perhaps it's our responsibility to invite men to take part in these conversations. And I'm very, very proud to say I brought my 2 co-founders, Mike and Eddie, were just here supporting me at this event. So what I want to talk about is imposter syndrome. We've all heard of this. We all know this. We talk about confidence and we say, well, am I really confident enough? So I've got a speech here, so I'll be reading from this to quote a few things. I hope you don't mind me saying that. So this syndrome is loosely defined as doubting your abilities and feeling like a fraud. So there were 2 psychologists, women psychologists, who coined this term, Pauline and Suzette. It was back in 1978 when they did this study. So you can imagine what the work environments were like back then, right? And they focused on, in their study, and they called it imposter phenomenon at the time. And they did this study on high achieving women. And it was said in the study, despite outstanding academic and professional accomplishments, women who experience the imposter phenomenon persist in believing that they're really not bright and have fooled anyone who thinks otherwise. Now that is just sad, isn't it? That is just sad. Even famous women, from Hollywood superstars like Charlize Theron, business leaders like Sheryl Sandberg, as well as the former First Lady Michelle Obama, have confessed to experiencing it. So we're not alone in this. There are women out in the world who are experiencing this as well. A Google search yields 15 million results and shows solutions. And this was something funny I found this morning, ranging from attending conferences, career development plans, reading books, to even reciting, this is a funny one, one's accomplishments in front of a mirror. Now, what's less explored is why imposter syndrome exists in the first place, and what role workplace, we're talking about we're talking about what we women can do. But I think there's a bigger conversation than that. What role workplace systems play in fostering and exacerbating it in women. Now, when this phenomenon was actually coined, or syndrome was actually coined, the impact of systemic racism, classism, xenophobia, and other biases was categorically absent from this study. Many groups were excluded from this study, namely women of color, people of various income levels, genders, professional backgrounds. Even as we know it today, imposter syndrome puts the blame on individuals. We're always talking about ourselves. Why do I feel this way? We don't look around. We don't think, maybe it's the environment I'm in. Maybe I don't feel like I belong. Maybe I don't feel like I feel validated. At the end of the day, despite your color, your gender, your upbringing, we're all looking for a place to belong. At workplace, we spend, 80% of our lives? And to work in an environment where we feel stifled, where we don't feel like we belong, how can that be healthy? So in my journey, I often thought about it. I've always been the rebellious kind. I didn't care. I never cared enough about what people said about me. But there was a phase a few years ago when some of my male colleagues didn't like the way I dressed up, didn't like the way I spoke up, didn't like the way I conducted myself, didn't like the way that I was perhaps getting more, achieving more than they were. And I'm sure a lot of us can relate to that. And what did I do? It made me sad. I got really depressed for 2 years. I stopped going to any socials. I stopped talking completely. I shut myself in. I didn't welcome any conversations. And I just thought, okay, if I just focus on my work and don't talk about these things and don't care about these things, maybe the world will just let me be. And then I had this conversation with my dad a year ago, or a couple of years ago. And he asked me again, are you happy being that way? Because I don't ever recall me being this depressed, this sad, this just less vocal. And I still remember, I thought, I don't want to work for anyone. I want to work for myself. I want to create a workplace which changes all of those things. And that's why I'm standing here today as a leader, as a co-founder, as a director, not a female co-founder, not a female director. I'm standing here for all those things that I've achieved. And I'm saying, I want to change this world with my co-founders here at Mike, who support me very, very deeply. Now, one thing I do want to point out, feeling unsure should make you an imposter. Really, I think how many people can relate to this? Really, are we invited to a career development conference where a session on overcoming imposter syndrome is not on the agenda? The label of this syndrome is heavy load to bear. It brings a feeling of criminal fraudulence in some capacity or the other. When the feeling is simply being insecure or feeling anxious about joining a new team or about learning a new skill, right? So even if we demonstrate strength, ambition, resilience, our daily battles with microaggressions, especially expectations and assumptions formed by stereotypes and racism, often push us down. And in my opinion, this imposter syndrome really fails to capture this dynamic and puts the onus on us women to deal with the effects. You feel like it? Perhaps you need to figure out what you can do in the workplace, rather than actually calling out the workplace and saying, we need to change as a system. We need to change the world as we know it today. Who is deemed professional is an assessment process that's culturally biased and skewed, and we all know that. If we all went to India right now, people perhaps wouldn't even look at most of the attire that we are wearing today and think, that's professional. They perhaps call me professional, but not you guys. Here I'm standing here today, perhaps in your eyes, I'm not professional. What I'm wearing doesn't fit with the stereotypes or the cultural biases that exist. So we have a lot of work to do, not just in workplaces, but starting from school, starting at home. And this is something very powerful. I'm going to say it out loud to understand the impact of these things. The once engaged Latina woman suddenly becomes quiet in meetings. The Indian woman who was a sure shot for promotion gets vague feedback about lacking leadership presence. The trans woman who always spoke up doesn't anymore because her manager makes gender insensitive remarks. The Black woman whose questions once helped create better products for the organization doesn't feel safe contributing feedback after being told she's not a team player. In my opinion, the answer to overcoming this is to not fix the individuals, but to create an environment that fosters a variety of leadership styles. We have to stop saying leader is supposed to be like this. We come from different backgrounds. We call ourselves global citizens. But are we really? Confidence doesn't equate to competence or healthy leadership at all. Leaders must create a culture for women, people of color, for anyone that addresses systemic bias, and racism. And perhaps only then we can stop misdiagnosing women with imposter syndrome once and for all. And I do want to say this, though this event is about us, about women, but it's not just us who feel like this. I have my co-founders who've told me about this, that they feel like imposters at times. I have a really successful CEO in Scotland who built this multi-million-pound company, sold it, and a year later he confided in me and said, I feel like an imposter. I don't think I can do that again. So we're not in it alone, but we can change the world as we see it. So what can we do? So as leaders, as someone who is in that position, I promise to bring my curious self to work. I need to be empathetic and vulnerable and be open-minded and ready to have these tough conversations with my team and beyond. So here are a few things we're actively doing at Oxford Dynamics. We're very careful of the language we use to describe our experiences. Doesn't mean that you'll be all of a sudden held accountable for the language you're using, but as a leader, it's your responsibility to inculcate and imbibe those values in the team. Being honest about the impact of bias. We have open discussions in our company where everyone talks about their understanding of this, what impact they would like to see in the company and the world, and figuring out a solution together as a team. Listen, listen, and listen, but listen with love and intent. And last but not the least, set up accountability mechanisms for change. That is very, very important. Now I'm going to leave this conversation or this monologue with one last sentence. I wonder what we all can do collectively if we all led this world with love and empathy. Thank you very much.
Does anybody have any questions? We can take a couple. Fantastic talk, Shefali. I can associate with a lot of things that we have spoken about. I'm just wondering, have you seen this difference between the Indian technology and the UK one? Because where I come from, Bangalore, it's very normal to have 60% women in a class and 40% men, working on electronics or any other tech-related thing. And it's the opposite here. I mean, I was looking at statistics, and I come from Oxford University as well, so we have done a lot of analysis on that. Do you think there's a cultural change here compared to India, and also having women as leaders and seeing women in tech? I mean, I've seen ISRO women who have led their program. So is that something that you have also noticed? You have also experienced here?
Yeah, so one thing perhaps that's worth being honest about is I left India when I was 18, so I've never had the opportunity to really work in an environment like you have. So I won't be able to give you an honest or open view on that. But I've certainly seen this cultural shift. But I do wonder why is that the case? I think both cultures, their differences in their own right. There's some things that the West, the UK is getting right. There's some things India is getting right. To me, it's never really about comparing any cultures. For me, the way I look at things is how can you close the gap? I've never really sort of done that comparison myself. But yes, from an observation standpoint, I think I can understand where you're coming from. Yeah, absolutely.
Lovely, thank you. Thank you so much. We're good.
Good. So thank you, everyone.
So Sara Wells from Maryland Centre Medical Research Council.
Hi everybody, thanks ever so much for Lucy and Shefali. It's been really inspirational. I think we're going to finish off with something that I'm hoping might be comforting, maybe probably not inspirational, but comforting. And again, this is something quite personal. I talk about kind of my personal family in my life quite a lot, so I hope this isn't a shock to anybody who knows me. But I'm going to talk a bit more about how I've dealt with the kind of confidence in the workplace, a bit about where some of my feelings and reactions come from when I'm challenged by things or intimidated in the workplace. I'm the director of this sort of brown building at the side and another bit further off, which is the MRC, which is the bottom of the runway, which lots of you won't know, but if you carry on going, there's a MRC campus down there. And I've been here for about 20 years now, came for 5 years, and then stayed for 20. I was originally born in Margate, that's quite relevant. I'm about to tell you my whole life story now, you realise that. I was born in Margate and I went to university in Sheffield, and I was really lucky because I actually got to do the thing that I wanted to do from when I was about 9 or 10, and definitely from when I was about 14 and sat in a biology class and listened to DNA replication. I thought that was amazing. And from then on, went on to do a genetics degree, PhD in genetics, and now run a genetic institute. So I've kind of lived the dream life. I've also got 2 kids, a house and a dog as well, so I really am living the dream life. My catchphrase is bring me sunshine, because Another way, Eric Morecambe, I got married in the same church as Eric Morecambe got married in Margate. And although he's not from Margate, he spent some of his time down there. And he really reminds me of my dad, of somebody who thought life was only worth living if you were having a good time or if you were happy. And I think at the end of this, if there's one thing that you should take away from this is if it's not making you happy, don't do it anymore. So obviously you will see why I've got slides. I'm not a biologist. Biologists always have slides as well. I'm going to tell you a bit about sort of generational difference in the other two speakers, and I'm going to tell you a bit about where some of my kind of inherent feelings about how I feel about things around work, and about how I feel about confidence when I'm put in difficult situations, and really where I think they stem from. And really this kind of sense of it, which is a bit that is almost an inbuilt biological reflex for me. I've had loads of coaching, and my coach said there ain't 25 years of therapy every day of the week that's going to get that out of you, girl. You just need to learn to cope with it. And I'm going to tell you about how I kind of cope around my old habits and how I react to challenges, and how I've done that as I've kind of been promoted and progressed through my career. I'm also going to talk a little bit about how I managed and I understand my own reactions. Now, this is how I do it. Some of it looks a bit mad, and that's fine because that's how I do it. I'm not suggesting that anybody else does this. You need to explore how you might do it for yourself. And as I said, I'm just going to keep saying, if you're not enjoying it, don't do it anymore. You know, you're here once, and I think the last few years have told us how valuable it is to really enjoy what you're doing and really strive to do something you want to do. And I've been really, really lucky in being able to do that. So these kind of inbuilt things that I can't change really do come from my family and my background. And in actual fact, almost everybody will have these drivers in them and these inbuilt things that come from where you come from. This is my lovely family. My dad died some years ago, but the story really isn't about my dad. It's about the lady in the middle, who's my mum, who can't work YouTube. I'm quite relieved because she might not hear this. She knows I feel this way. So I'm one of 4 children. My youngest brother, which is top right, is a fisherman, and he was sort of brought up. He's much younger than the rest of us, so kind of this story isn't about him either. My sister on the right hand side, who is the eldest, and she is a retired head teacher now. Myself at the back, and who we call the golden boy, which is my brother. My big brother is a physicist. He's an amazing person, and my mum tells us how amazing my big brother is all of the time. And it is to do with him being a boy. It's not to do with him. If you substituted him with a girl, then my sister would be in prime position. But it is to do with him being a boy. And when we were growing up together, myself and my sister Leslie, were expected to do the chores around the house, but Simon wasn't, because that's not what boys did. You know, this was in the 70s. He was allowed to go out later. He had much more freedom than we ever had. And it was made very clear in conversations with my parents that, you know, they would never ever stop us doing anything. And I should emphasise now that I don't think she loves him more than me. I think she loves me the most of all of us. She loves him more than me. But there was this ranking. There was a ranking according to what you could do and what you could achieve. And that went throughout the whole of my family. So my sister, her mother-in-law, once told me, "You can't have a career forever, Sarah." That was pretty much the message from all of my family and all of my extended family. We are first generation university goers, so most people were born in Margate and have lived in Margate. My sister's just done one of those DNA ancestry things. My family hasn't moved for 300 years. We're bred on this little island on the tip of Kent. So you know, it's a very close community. But it was made very obvious, and I went to an all-girls grammar school, and the all-girls grammar school, all of the lessons were geared to what a girl would do. You know, we didn't do woodwork, we did home economics, we did sewing, we did all of those things that we had to wear skirts. You know, we did all of those things that were very geared towards, and that kind of inherent ranking of the boys and the girls really goes to my core. I've got a couple of funny stories about my mum. So this is even now, this ranking to my brother. So her and my younger brother come up a few years ago for Christmas, spent 10 days at my house at Christmas. It's a strange 10 days with your mum in the house, but 10 days. And she dropped off at my brother's on the way up for an overnight stay. And when she arrived, I decided, my mum's always, if you go out to a restaurant, she always has pie. and I decided I would make the most tasty, brilliant pie to welcome my mum for this Christmas celebration we were going to have. And I cooked this pie, and I even made the pastry myself, even puff pastry myself. And I put it in front of her on the dinner table with all of the veg and everything, and said, "Da-da!" And she said, "Do you know your brother doesn't buy broccoli, he grows it?" That's her first comment. There is something that outranks a man in my mum's eyes, and what outranks a man in my mum's eyes is a famous man or a man with money, a man with money and status. And so my mum's friend's daughter is married to Dermot O'Leary. So my mum knows Dermot O'Leary's mother-in-law. Recently, I was with my mum in Margate, and we bumped into somebody she hadn't seen for 30 years. And the two things that she thought were really vital that she told that lady about the last 30 years of the whole of the family news was, Simon is a physicist and I know Dermot O'Leary's mum. So knowing about where these things come from have really helped me cope with the insecurities and laugh in them off. You know, me and my sister laugh about these things now. We didn't when we were younger, but we do now. And it's really helped me kind of deal with these insecurities and deal with these goals. And it's not about thinking that I'm worse. I think I rank less. I think somebody ranks above me. It's quite hard to explain, but that's how I think. So how I support my confidence is about 8 years ago when I was made director. It was kind of a fairly quick promotion. I went into an interim director position. I've been running big teams beforehand, but not in a level where you have to interact with governance and all of the kind of funded bodies and things like that. And I started having coaching. And if anybody gets the opportunity to have one-to-one coaching, it really has revolutionised my life. If you have a coach that you really knows you and can really read you, it really makes a huge difference. And I believe it's made a huge difference to my team, and I think it's made a huge difference to how I feel about life, having somebody there to advise and give you some encouragement. My coach within half an hour said, one of your parents is dominant than the other, and you're really competitive with a sibling within half an hour of meeting me. So I really have a kind of special coach. But one of the things that she's taught me and that we've discussed together is what gives me confidence when I'm doing things like that. Hence the fact I've got slides and I've got a script. So I prepare for everything, and I prepare really well. I'm like a pathological preparer for things that I think that I might lack confidence in. So, for example, one of the biggest challenges was sort of 18 months ago when I had to go in front of the MRC strategy board to defend the unit and to defend the next 5 years. And I was terrified. These are, the big names in life science in the UK. And so for that, I worked through from the whole week, and I worked through from what were the kids going to eat every day, how were they going to get to where they were with my husband and things, what clothes were I going to wear, what was I going to do the night before, knowing that I would be nervous the night before, how was I going to relax on the day, what was I going to have for breakfast before I got there, what train was I going to get on, what was I going to do if that train was late or delayed. How was I going to present myself when I got there? What time would I get there so that I wouldn't have a big gap and be nervous before I went in? I talked through with my friends, my colleagues, my worries about those meetings. And then most importantly, I'd also planned what I was going to drink in the pub when I came back. And I think what's helped me is acknowledging that it's actually okay to feel like that. That it's not, I shouldn't be doing this because I feel like that. I do feel like that, and I can't get over that. It's built in me, and I'm always going to feel like that, but it's okay. I just find ways of managing it. So there are good bits of being able to manage this big green bit that I can manage now. There are good bits. The fact that I've always ranked lower than boys means that I do have a sense of self-achievement when I do achieve something. The fact that I prep means that what I'm prepping for is usually very accurate. So what you get from me is usually the right thing, it's not dashed off. And I do still focus on having fun, because I think having fun is one of the most important things to do. And this is a picture of us this Christmas. We're very close family. Mum still says the things that she's always said about my brother or about some random guy who happens to have a bigger house or a bigger car, etc. But I think if me and my sister can overcome this and have these coping mechanisms, everybody can. Because remember, we have the brother who grows broccoli.
anybody have any questions at all they'd like to ask?
And maybe more of a personal one, because I've got 2 young daughters, and I've always been very, more about equality and the work I do in space agency, encouraging young females in particular to study STEM, go into the space sector. But my daughters are 18 months and coming up to 4 years old, and already with the 4-year-old, obviously she's going to nursery. There's birthday parties, princess-themed birthday parties, and I find it really, really hard to know what to do in those kind of situations, because I don't want to make a big thing about it. And obviously, there's the whole kind of, they want to fit in with their friends.
Yeah.
And my mum says, "Oh, it's just a princess dress. It's just this." And I kind of feel like when Shafali was saying as well about her when she was 5 years old, she wanted to fit in or she wanted to be herself. I really struggle with it actually. I'm doing it actually in my personal life rather than talking about it at work.
Yeah, I think it's our battle, not theirs. So I let my daughter do what she wants. And one thing that I don't do is say, no, you can't wear, a jumpsuit, you can't wear X, Y, and Z. I'm never going to say to her she's not going to be able to do that because she's a girl. I think it's natural for kids to want to do and want to fit in. And I think you can reassure them if they don't want to fit in, that's fine. If they do want to fit in, making them not fit in might also be quite damaging. So I think, I hate all the princess stuff, I have to say. I think it's, but the kids love it, and they do love it, and I think, I just never buy it for them.
Yeah, thank you.
I just encourage them to have other things. I would say the thing is just never to say no that they can't do something. I just say that yes, they can do it, or unless it's going to cost me loads of money, then of course they can't. It's really tricky, that. It's really tricky. I've got a 9-year-old, and that's the fact.
Mike?
Well, thanks for a great speech there. This is really, I guess, an observation. It builds on, I think, the first question that came to Lucy. The element of kind of like preaching to the choir at these events, because these are incredibly powerful and really important messages coming across here. So why aren't we building sessions like this as part of our main conferences? Because we're all in quite a great position of authority that are responsible for putting agendas together at conferences. So why aren't we putting 1 or 2 of these modules together? So I put a challenge out to Raoul at the Raoul Space Conference this year. Rather than just talking exclusively about technology, why don't we just have one module in there that comes to this, the women in technology element?
And Siobhan is right, you do get overcoming imposter syndrome. What I'm saying is, if you've got imposter syndrome, it's quite hard to overcome something. It's quite hard to, my coach once said to me, you're not the sort of person who can put an idea in a metaphorical box in your head and throw it out a metaphorical window. I just looked at it and didn't really know what metaphorical meant. I'm not that. And typically, scientific women as well, women in tech, will find it very difficult to overcome some things in a kind of philosophical way. And, I find it very difficult. My brain doesn't work that way. My brain is like, it's not a window in my head, it's loads of neurons, that type of thing. I think those kind of, we need to not do what we used to do and overcoming this, because overcoming it means that you're not meant to have had it. What I say is that this is what makes us all different, and there are good bits about having imposter syndrome, and the good bits are that you're very self-aware. And so we should be celebrating those good bits as well as trying to just not cope with those bits and make ourselves a bit happier around the situations. But I agree, I think, it would be really good to have some bigger places that we talk to these, rather than just women's say where, we have the keen and the not keen are sat growing broccoli.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Really, really helpful. Before we wrap up, I'm conscious that we're just overrunning. There is tea and coffee out there and some biscuits if you'd like to do some networking, some take some conversation offline. We'd be delighted to chat to you more. But just very, very quickly, a couple of announcements to run through. We've got a couple of events coming up. The Next Gen Prepare for Success. We've got an organisation coming in over at the MRC at Harwell, actually, on the 23rd of March. Again, looking at how to present yourself confidently to your colleagues and potential employers. Great work there for our next generation across the campus. And then the Harwell Connect Quantum date TBC, April time, but the usual time, 3 o'clock on the same at the Harwell Innovation Centre. Looking at, we've got speakers from Railspace, M6 and Redwood about looking at quantum arena and sharing insights and reaching out to you and sharing collaboration. So watch this space, and we'll get that over to you on the through the usual channels. But I just want to say an absolute massive thanks to our lovely speakers, Lucy, Shafali and Sara. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, guys, for coming along, joining us this morning. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you with us. And yeah, let's not stick to celebrating this during one day. Let's make this more of a regular thing. So without holding you up anymore, do go and have tea and coffee. Thank you so much for coming. Time to know it.